Hey there, Jamie Cunningham with SalesUp TV. We're talking about the 5 steps to create the best year ever. Now, that sounds like not bald, I'm bald, but a bold claim. But really, it's not that complicated. The steps, like many things, are relatively simple. We don't need to make them more complicated than they need be. Yet, executing on them and doing them, well, that's another story. That's not necessarily easy. But let's dive into it. Let's look at those 5 steps and give you the foundation to create your best year ever. So the starting point, as Stephen Covey is famous for saying, is you have to begin with the end in mind, which means you've got to know exactly what that best year looks like for you. What are the outcomes that you want to create, whether that is within your work, within personal, whatever that may be. You've got to know in detail what is the description of that best year. So that has to be in writing. You have to write it out, and I suggest that 3 bullet points probably isn't enough. The more detail and clarity you can give that description, the much greater chance you're going to have of achieving it. That's only step 1, right? This is not just write it down and then it's going to happen. That's step 1. Step 2 is identity, and now that's your identity, because who you are today is who has created what you have right now. And if you look at the description you've got for your best year ever, that's going to require a different person to make that happen. So you've got to craft the identity of the person that you have to become to be able to create that ideal, that best year ever. So again, this is get as much detail as you can around this. What skills do you need to develop? What characteristics, what traits do you need to be able to work on over the next year to become the person who can create that best year? So you need to know that in detail. Number 3 is the plan, right? You've crafted out this definition or this description of what the ideal, the best year looks like. You now need to know a plan of how you're going to get from where you are today to creating that best year. And that plan is not going to be a one-pager. It might be a one-pager when it's finished, but the workings behind it, the thinking that's going to have to go behind that plan, it's going to be detailed. And the more detail, you might not be a detailed person. I'm not a detailed person, but I know when I just, gloss down a few bullet points around something, the depth of thinking behind that is a lot different to sitting down and writing out pages of information. It's not pages for the sake of pages, but the act of writing down lots of stuff requires you've got to think about lots of things to be able to make that happen. And the more detail there is behind your plan, the greater the thinking behind it, and the more chance that you've thought through the what ifs and what actually has to happen to make that plan a reality, to be able to execute on that plan. Now, if you don't have a methodology for planning, check out our website, www.salesup.com.au, and we've got a free guide on there that you can download and use for your plan. Now, point number 4 is how are you going to create momentum and accountability? So it's one thing to know what you want to have a plan in place, but actually making the rubber hit the road and executing on an ongoing, consistent basis, that can be tough to do. We always have our ups and downs, and there are going to be moments where you're not going to feel like doing what needs to be done. So you need to have the mechanisms in place, whether it be accountability, visual reminders, personal habits, that you can rely on to keep you pushing through. I see many entrepreneurs, business owners are great starters and not great finishers. So we've got to make sure we've got the strength or the resources or the support to make sure we can carry through with what we're going to have, right? Your best year ever is only going to come through persistent execution. Point number 5 is your growth. This goes hand in hand with your identity, and you've got to make sure that throughout that next year, you are growing. You are working on yourself. You are reading things. You're going to seminars, or, you've got yourself a coach. You've got ways that you're working on skills, working on your abilities, always stepping outside your comfort zone, doing things that scare you a little bit. That has to be your mantra for the next year, because hopefully the identity that you craft out is a little ways from where you are today. So it's going to take some work to you to become that person, and that requires growth, a commitment to growth over the next year. So look, 5 steps: clarity on what your best year looks like, working clarity on the identity that you need to create for yourself and you need to become, working on a plan that's going to create, the steps you have to execute on, actually executing on that plan, having the accountability in place to make it happen. And number 5, having that commitment to growth and continually working on yourself over the course of the next year. So that's it. 5 steps. Easy, right? Well, simple, but not easy. And that's why you see so many people that don't create amazing years, because it takes work. It takes hard work. But if you're committed to it and you know what you want to have, you've got a strong reason why, you can absolutely make it happen. Jamie Cunningham with SalesUp TV, signing off.